On July the 2nd, 2024, Neptune, the giant sea god who rules your illusions, delusions, enchantments, and even your mystical and magical imagination, is going to go retrograde. And when he does this, it's as if the tide is coming out on something that was hidden from view. As the wave washes into the shore, that's Neptune direct, all sparkly and beautiful, and then the wave pulls back out, and you see what's actually there, left on the shore once the wave of enchantment has receded. We're going to talk about how Neptune retrograde can be very illuminating, almost in a very Hangman in the Tarot, halo on your head, Odin hanging on the world tree to get the runes for humanity, a language. Basically, you can use a retrograde Neptune to be able to penetrate what is really true in your life for you as an individual, rather than the mesmerization that you may have been under during Neptune's promises, promises, promises direct motion transit. So let's talk about how this works. He goes retrograde on July the 2nd. He turns around into direct motion on December 7th. So it will be that window of time, July 2nd to December 7th, that you're reassessing something or able to see clearly, or the fog is lifting. One of my favorite quotes is, Robert Moore, the soul has an absolute unforgiving need for regular excursions into enchantment. It needs it like the mind needs thoughts and the body needs food. That's my rough memory of that quote. We love enchantment. Neptune makes the unreal seem real. Neptune is the matrix maker. In that movie, The Matrix, one of my favorite scenes is Spoon Boy. Neo says, "How do you bend that spoon like Uri Geller so perfectly?" And the bald boy, Spoon Boy, says, "There is no spoon. Remember, there is no spoon." And reality is like that. We get lost in this sort of illusion in our reality of our perceptual apparatus, right? We smell, taste, hear, see things, but the idea of what we're seeing being actually real in a substantial sense is not true according to quantum physics. So I would like to open up the dialogue here with what parts of our life seemed really real to us. When did it seem really real or really true or really enchanting? And we were really quite mesmerized or hypnotized by it. Is it that relationship? Is it your work or job path? Is it your finances? Is it your home and nest? What is it, your career purpose and ambition? Because that enchantment energy would have been active, okay, during this retrograde. What we're talking about is, what were you doing from March the 11th of 2024 through to the beginning of the retrogradation at 29 Pisces, because it is that window of time between March 11th and July 2nd that, as Neptune goes back and rolls back the tide, you're reinvestigating it. You're rethinking it. You're seeing it differently. Sometimes it's the illusion gives way to the disillusionment, or the hypnosis is waking, you're waking from the hypnosis, or the fog is lifting. So that's how I see the retrograde motion of Neptune. I enjoy it because then I can see what's really on that beach when the tide rolls back, when the wave recedes, what is left there that's useful for you, for me, that we can actually pick up and put our hands on and, have a functional relationship with. What's underneath the foam, what's underneath the quantum foam, what's underneath the thing that seems to be also true. So that's how we're going to approach this for your sign today. I want you to listen for your sun sign, moon sign, and rising. If you're listening for your sun, you're listening for your career and purpose, and maybe your soul. And if you're listening for your rising sign, it's everything about you, because it's the character you play in the matrix or game of life. And if you're listening for your moon sign, it may be germane or relevant to your body or your home needs as well. Now, listen to all three and tell me what works best, okay? I tried to be very Neptunian today. I wore a kind of a turquoise blue with a kind of a turquoisey, it reminds me of the ocean. And this is freshwater pearls from some earrings I bought in Lisbon. So we're in a sea mode here, guys. What else can I tell you about this before I show you the chart? I can say a few things about Neptune in general. If you don't mind bearing with me, it might be helpful for you to understand these details. Neptune was last in Pisces back in the 1800s, 1848 to 1860. And when he was there, he was also co-joining in 1848 and 49 with a co-present Saturn. because we have Saturn in Pisces also retrograde. Well, Neptune retrograde. Saturn goes retrograde on June 30th. Please watch my all signs deep dive video for that story. And Neptune also is retrograding on that threshold critical degree, starting out at 29 degrees of Pisces, moving back to 27. When those two planets were together in 1948 and 1949 in the sign of Pisces, we saw the beginning of spiritualism as a movement. That was the Fox sisters who were channeling dead people and doing seances. And it eventually led to an amazing fad, or, it went like wildfire throughout the country of United States, into the White House, where Lincoln's wife wanted to do seances in the Red Room, and they did seances in the White House Red Room. So what I think I like about that is one thing in particular, because women were involved, right? It was women couldn't be priests, pastors, church leaders, spiritual leaders in any official sense, but the Fox sisters were doing the seances and the rapping on the tables and all of this stuff, and it became a woman's movement. And this is important because this retrograde Neptune, as he stations at 29 degrees, is in a flowing trine to the asteroid Lilith, the first wife of Adam, who became the mother of demons. But that to me is a patriarchal overlay on a story of a powerful first wife of Adam who did not want to be second fiddle and just said, forget it, I'm out of here. So Eve was the second wife, right? That's kind of interesting. So the first wife of Adam was ultimately an independent feminine energy. Like, she was not like kowtowing to the husband, not, following the rules, doing her own damn thing. So there's a qualitative Lilith archetype, the asteroid, not the black moon energy, playing out in this retrograde. So where individually and collectively and individually, may we see, as the tide rolls back on some areas of reality, the power of women rising in the world. Particularly, for example, Pisces being the fourth house of the United States Sibley chart, representing the party in opposition to the ruling party, therefore at this point the Republican Party, and a tide rolls back as Neptune retrogrades. And don't forget, we're readdressing things that began in March, flowing to asteroid Lilith. Let me show you the sky, which represents in essence some sort of feminine power. Mercury will also be near the last degrees of a water sign, and this makes a grand trine in the sky that seems to be about perhaps revealing the hidden, unseen power of a particular female leader in the United States of America, as one example. In your own life, whether you're male or female, where do you need to buck the system and do things your own way? Because that's what Lilith did. She was basically, forget it, I'm out of here. I'm not second fiddle. I'm not bowing to Adam and I'm doing my own thing. And then the mother of demons, well, what the hell, why not, right? Sounds like a powerful job to me. So we're going to look at that, and we're going to bring into the story as well one more thing. Neptune rules imagination and enlightenment. And he's the god of photography and filmmaking and creativity and art that requires a huge amount of imagining something is real that isn't. So the film industry is particularly Neptunian. Hollywood, now it's everything else, Amazon Prime, etc. But there may be some really interesting things going on in the world to do with changes in the media of film. And maybe it begins to become more about the generation of new technologies regarding AI. But as the tide rolls back and Neptune rolls back, we can see some stories as well to do with new films that are being released between July the 2nd and December 7th. That could be literally about disenchantment, disillusionment, and facing something real after being misled, because deceptive, manipulative, spin doctor, false truth stuff, whatever. What's the word I really want? Fake news, good old Donald Trump, fake news. That's very Neptunian, right? To pull the wool over people's eyes, to fog the truth up. And as Neptune rolls backwards, right, and sort of the tide rolls out, we're going to see on the shore things that may not be comfortable collectively, things about, the deeper reasons for wars that are ongoing in the world. whistleblower energy is Neptune retrograde. Things to do with disclosures of things that were hidden from view. So we'll see a lot of that energy in the collective. Let me show you the sky, and I want you to show you how this Lilith lines up. And I also want to talk briefly about the Sabian symbol of 29 degrees, which is 30 Pisces, upon which Neptune stations. Just so you know, Neptune is leaving. He got like 2011 into Pisces. He's usually at 14 years in a sign. He's getting his tail out of there in 2026, February for good, although he will slide next year into the sign of Aries, all right, on March the 30th, 2025. But then by October, he slips back of 2025 into Pisces. So we're going to have a foretaste of what all astrologers are super excited about, which is the conjunction of Saturn and Neptune together in February of 2026 as they hold hands at the 0 degrees of Aries, the world axis point. And as we get ready for that to take place, we're beginning to feel into it, next year, March 30th through to October 4th, where we see Neptune hanging out in the sign of Aries, and Saturn joins Neptune in the month of May. So May, June, July, August, September, Saturn and Neptune are testing the waters together in the sign of Pisces. But the full Monty is going to be February of 2026. Now let me show you the sky and let's roll into some stories, shall we? I might also mention that often we look at Neptune. I mean, this is common in astrology. So let's investigate it together as viruses, toxins, and poisons, and certainly drug addiction and addictions and escapism and mental illness are the dark shadow side of Neptune, where the positive side, of course, is enlightenment all the way through to, connecting to the divine within ourselves and our highest, awakened imagination, Ella Neville Goddard. But also, I want to point out that, we have seen Neptune historically look like times of collective pandemics or illnesses. And back in the 1800s, in fact, that was when we had cholera outbreaks. And it was literally when Saturn hardship in Pisces and then Neptune were co-present together in Pisces. So for example, there was a 2-year outbreak in England and Wales in 1848 that claimed 52,000 lives of cholera, which is of course a waterborne illness, and Pisces is a sign of water. And also in 1847 and 1851, there was a cholera pandemic or outbreak in which over 1 million people died. And don't forget, that's a lot of people in the nation of Russia. So we have seen Saturn hardship in Pisces, and that can mean water, Neptune illnesses or viruses or contagions or something like that, because the small things that you can't see, like a virus or bacteria, can cause some harm here, being connected to these sorts of events. Now, I'm not saying that the retrograde will indicate some surge of some kind of contagion or virus. It could, it may not. I don't know. I just want to bring it up so that at least I did not talk about that. The other thing I would say is, enlightenment is very Neptunian. When Neptune was moving through my 12th house, which I'm an Aquarius rising, right? So when Neptune was moving through my 12th, not my 12th house, when Neptune was moving from my first house, when he was in Aquarius, not Pisces, I began to have awakening, spiritual enlightenment episodes, right? And that's why I have a blog called The Awakened Dreamer. So having this Neptunian influence in our lives is good for our spiritual illumination. It's good for downloading the divine energies. It's good for connecting to your imagination and your creativity as well. And the retrograde will tell you what areas of your life you really should focus on, what areas of your life are worthy of that attention. I wrote a poem back when I had Neptune in my first house, my Aquarian first house. It really kind of is also, to me, extremely symbolic of what it's like when Neptune pulls back, the wave recedes or the tide goes out instead of in, and we begin to see what's left on that shore, what is revealed to be true and not illusory or not temporarily satisfying. I'm going to read that poem to you, and then we're going to go ahead and do all signs. I think that's probably a good way to finish the intro up, and we'll do all signs, and we'll look at the sky collectively as I show you the picture. Let me just get that poem out of my software back end here and read it to you. So if you're interested in my blog, theawakenedreamer.com, I don't have any SEO on it right now. You'd have to really, it's on my channel, but you'd have to Google like Lori Lothian, The Awakened Dreamer blog, that kind of thing. Put a lot of words in there, enlightenment, because I'm not, I'm not maximizing the SEO. You have to dig for it these days. But it was quite an endeavor for quite a few years. And so the poem that I wrote is called After the Party. And this was during a time in which we still had the transit of Neptune in Aquarius. And so I wrote that poem in 2010. 2010? Ah! Sorry, I was going to look at the date and I just lost the poem. So give me a second. Yeah, let's find that poem that I wrote. Yes, I used to be like an award-winning poet back in the day. Okay, so I had like all this writing, creative stuff I used to do in my early journalism years. Okay, and it is now, of course, just when you need it, missing in action. Give me a sec, guys. It's called After the Party, and it really was a poem I wrote after the party. And the reason I'm bringing up the idea of after the party is because life is like this big enchantment, right? The soul does have an absolutely unforgiving need for regular excursions into enchantment. But on the other hand, sometimes because we're so dazzled, mesmerized, and enchanted by seeming reality, we miss what's true. And that's the common condition of humanity. It's the uncommon condition for the enlightened, sages. So after the party, I woke one day to the first sober light, the glint of truth in a dull sky. This light bore no warmth, no hint of benevolence. Instead, inglorious, the dawn cast a cold brilliance and a harsh reminder of what was lost. All the abandon in the world, all the revelry cannot forever keep me with the lure of pleasure from joy. This masquerade never really began. I dreamed the mask, and in the steel of this new day, I awake faceless. I always thought God was kinder. And I wrote that in May of 2010. And then I had a massive spiritual blowout a year later. So it's a vibe here of being caught up in the enchantment of the unreal and then coming down to earth soberly to see what is true and real. That is very Neptunian in its receding back over the ground to take us back to things that began to enchant or delude us collectively or individually beginning March 11th through to July 2nd. And we're going to go back and see what's really under that surface. Now, I will predict that there will be something going on in the United States Republican Party based on the recession energy, the removal of the illusion, as Neptune will backtrack through the sky in the sign of Pisces. And Pisces is the Republican Party or the oppositional party to the dominant party of power in the United States. So that retraction, let's put us into a sky that looks like a Sag rising, just for simplicity, which is what the United States is in the Sibley chart, which is a very accurate chart. So if anyone, doubts that chart, it does accurately reflect world events based on the signing of the Declaration of Independence. Okay, so if the United States is a Sag rising, and so is Joe Biden, by the way, we can see that we have Neptune and, of course, Saturn turning retrograde, Saturn on June 30th, Neptune on July the 2nd. And this will mean that there's going to be something pulling back to do with Republican stories. Of course, Donald Trump is running for president. And we're also going to see the flowing trine energy to the planet Mercury. Now, I have to go back a day to show that to you because as the station happens, as the station begins, right, we're actually going to have Mercury still in Cancer. Let's get it right to the exact moment, just so I'm absolutely certain of that, okay? So the station retrograde is going to happen. I still think we have an anaretic Mercury. I want to make sure, just in case I'm wrong. Yes, we do. So here we have around 4 a.m. in the morning, Vancouver, Canada. We're going to see Mercury station retrograde at 29 degrees and 55 minutes on that cusp of Aries. And as he stations retrograde, he flows to a 29 degree and 51 minute Mercury and a 26 degree and 24 minute Lilith, which forms what we would call a great big triangle called a grand water trine. And Lilith, again, to me, is that independent, fierce force of the feminine who wishes to stand her own ground irrespective of the masculine. And so what we could see here is a energetic rise to power of a female in the Republican Party and in a very significant way. And this is applying, as I said, to somebody who would have already been stepping into the political arena, perhaps as early as March March of 2024, March 11th. And now there's a return to that person in some way, or reinvestigation of that person. And this is, of course, until December 7th, when we see the direct motion movement of Neptune. Technically, it's not until March the 28th that Neptune gets out of this whole 29 Pisces shadow zone. And March 30th, he's moving into post shadow. He's moving on March 30th into Aries. So we're in a long story here. Let's see what this looks like for the world, though. Maybe it is that. I told you I'd talk about the Sabian symbol. The Sabian symbol has to do with a stone face. Now, that's, of course, very obtuse. I thought right away of Mount Rushmore. But I'm going to also read for you somebody I really enjoy, which is John Burgess, or Burgess. I don't know how to say his name. His website is jamesburgess.com. And he talks about Pisces 30, rounding up that 29 degrees, where the station is happening. And he says, becoming our own ideal. There is no right answer to or best version of anything. We make it all up according to how we feel or think we should. We become whatever we idealize. Instead of ending our journey, we find that we have become the seed of yet another cycle of experimentation. We idealize many things, love, truth, God, for example. And this is how we become aware of our relationship with archetypes, the essential conundrum which Plato and Aristotle wrestled with without resolution is whether we create archetypes or the archetypes create us. The exact same puzzle is posed in the Hindu scripture, the Mahabharata. Do we create God, or does God create us? So, alrighty, if anybody watched Neil Gaiman's American Gods, that whole "do we create God or does God create us" is literally the underpinning thesis of that fiction in his book and in the series that was made from his book. All right, and Daniel Rujar expanded the basic Great Stone Face Sabian symbol to the following: a majestic rock formation resembling a face is idealized by a boy who takes it as his ideal of greatness, and as he grows up begins to look like it. So I leave you with these ponderings as a very mystical interpretation of the Sabian symbol, which of course is relevant to the idea that Neptune himself is obtuse and foggy and mystical and magical and enchanting and imaginative energies. All right, and the word photography, I found this out recently, and I was really, because Neptune rules photography, because a new photo printing technique was invented in the 1800s, just before Neptune moved into the sign of Pisces, but it was refined during his stay in Pisces. And that time frame of 1848 to 1860, other than the spiritualism movement, which we may see a rise of new spiritualism energies beyond what we've already seen in the next while, the New Age movement is very Neptune, right? So you might want to say, well, 2011 to now, till now, where has this New Age movement taken us? But also this idea of photography being writing and light, because photo means light, like photon, and graphy means writing. Photography is actually, the word was coined by the guy named Herschel, who invented the silver iodine or some kind of a plate and glass to press the photography into, so you had a lasting print. Writing in light, writing with light. I mean, does that not enchant you? Because everything is made out of light, We're made out of light, frequency and light. Okay, so I just thought I had to share that. Let's get going with the all signs. We're going to talk about how, most particularly, I'm going to focus for everyone on a moment in time in which, as this retrograde Neptune goes backwards, you're going to find there is going to be an opposition to Juno. And that will be a significant one, because for Neptune to be opposite Juno is literally a 168-year story, right, ago. So it's not common, and it will have an impact on the world at large and in our individual lives as well. That opposition to Juno, who's been forever puttering through the sign of Virgo, I'm sorry, Virgos, about that, making you question your relationship, if a significant other's in your life. This is going to be an opposition that's pretty tightly happening around the August 7th to the 9th. So let's just jump ahead so I can show it to you. And we're going to talk about how the tide is pulling back on some illusion, and you're going to be able to see it in early October. You'll feel it between July the 30th and August the 10th. July the 30th and August the 10th, but more exact around August 7th to the 9th. It's going to be a time in which some part of our reality, individually and collectively, to do with what Juno is up to, where is it? I said August, now I'm in October. I apologize. I don't know why this jumped so far ahead. Backwards we go. Am I August? Yes. 7th to the 9th. So around here, all right, we're seeing Juno at 29 degrees, anoretic, in powerful, intense completion and karmic energy with a very old karmic, anoretic, intense, and culminating Neptune. And this can indicate with the retrograde some relationship energy that began sometime in March, or that you've been involved with somebody since March, because that's the retrograde shadow, March 11th, some commitment that you have made to a situation or a person. Juno is like the wife of Zeus, and he often does represent marriage and divorce matters. Juno does, I mean. But also, it's just the archetype of really persevering to hold to a commitment no matter what. And I'm going to interpret this, therefore, as Neptune is retrograding over old ground and revealing things underneath that foamy water that were hidden from view and look so sparkly and beautiful as that tide came in. Now you're looking at what's there. Is there a gross, piece of garbage there? Is there a dead fish, or is there something quite enchanting under that water after all? And whatever it is, it may have you assess a commitment, a vow, a relationship, something you decided to honor and not break, Juno, in the Virgo part of your sky. And there is some really cool stuff happening later on with a finger of God in the fall in October to both Juno and Venus. So, they will be in Libra at the time of the finger of God. We'll cover that when we get to that. By the way, forgot to say, don't forget, my name is Lori Lothian. I'm using the Western Tropical Zodiac, whole sign houses. Like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell. And I'm trying to help you time your best life using ancient astrology. This is so beautiful. I found this at the farmer's market, a handcrafted little keychain yesterday. And I forgot that Neptune was going to go retrograde. And picked up this keychain and I'm like, oh my God. It made me think of the sea and that sea, what do you call starfish? And I thought, I have to do a Neptune retrograde video, for goodness sakes. How charming is that? Alrighty. Let's go back to the all signs. I'm sorry, guys. I am a bit slow today. Some of you know I had COVID. It took me forever to get over it. I did call my YouTube support on back end, and they told me that they were dumping subscribers who were fake accounts, bots, or dormant accounts during the month of June, explaining why my subscribers, I could have had like 4,000 new subscribers like I did last month, but then they pulled out the plug on, 2,500 existing counts in my subscriptions that weren't real, apparently. So that's what happened. Just so you know, I wasn't getting some kind of algorithmic punishment by YouTube, because my views are the same and my watch time is the same. So I'm just reassuring myself publicly that all is well on the home front there. Let's start off with Aries. Now, don't forget, this is, again, I'm reminding you guys, you're looking to think about how March the 11th, you began in a certain enchantment direction. Everything looked really wonderful and beautiful in a subsection of your sky between 27 Pisces and 29 Pisces. And you were really totally dazzled by it as Neptune went direct. And then now he's pulling back the curtain like the Wizard of Oz and showing us something real. And as he pulls back that curtain, we may actually like what we see, or we may want to reassess what illusions, delusions, and enchantments we were under that now we're disillusioned from and we're disenchanted by. Okay. So let's start off with the Aries people. And that would be you, me. I'm Aries sun and moon. So I totally get you guys. I'm a part of the tribe of Arians. Aries are the least likely to watch a YouTube video, just so you know. I don't know why that's true, but it is. On astrology. All right, Aries, sun, moon, and rising sign. So basically, we're looking at a story here where you can pretty well imagine that you're pulling back the tide, so to speak, on matters to do with your enlightenment, your spirituality, your spiritual liberation, addictions and self-undoing, and bad habits and patterns. These are 12th house matters. And you're doing it in a very all-power, all feminine, kick-ass way. But on a practical note as well, with that energy of the onset of the retrograde, the beginning of the retrograde involving Mercury in the 29th degree of your 4th house home, property, and real estate, there's going to be some likely reassessments of matters to do with home, real estate, property, maybe tenancies and leases, money, mortgages, financing, and all of those matters. And you may be negotiating Mercury or communicating some new situation regarding those matters. But as Neptune is also in the 12th house of revenue that you can partake of from foreign companies, foreigners, and foreign shores, or in our digital income way, international borderless revenue through Stripe or PayPal accounts or payment processors. That is also something that the tide is going back in, and you're looking underneath the surface. Is this addiction worth it? Is this self-undoing habit and pattern ready to be ditched? What's underneath the surface of your enchantment regarding matters to do with income generated internationally? What kind of disenchantment may you experience in your own spiritual path? On the other hand, Neptune shows you what's really there when he's retrograde, where when he's going forward, he dazzles you with in a kind of a mesmerized promises. So when it comes to your spiritual life, the tide pulling back can really open up doors of perception, Neptune, as to what is really true when it comes to the soul work that you wish to do. Because you see, when Neptune begins his retrograde onset, as I mentioned, he will do that on July 2nd, and he'll retrograde through to December 7th. He's in a moksha trine with Mercury, the dream messenger of the gods, in the sign of Cancer, and with Lilith in the sign of Scorpio, but in the houses 4, 8, and 12, which are all about the deep soul work, liberation from the ancestral, the familial, and from the limitations of the separate self. Yes, full on Sartori or Nirvanas, whatever you wish to call it. So you're looking at a very powerful time in which that old Odin hanging from the world tree, the hangman suspended, the halo on your head, may emerge as illumination of what is true and what is real if you are on a spiritual seeker path at all. Alrighty. Also, with the opposition to Juno in the 6th house, what agreements or vows have you made that you're going to reassess when it comes to matters of work? This is the work house. This is your clients, your employer, employee, the job space, the service you do in the world to pay off that karmic debt and get those rewards of your 11th house, right? And honestly, maybe you made some commitments here to certain work patterns or work matters that you are no longer sure you want to keep, because this retrograde Neptune in the first week of August is suggesting that you may want to ditch it. And you'll start to wonder about that. Should I change this work habit pattern, situation, job? Is it time to let it go? You might start asking that question as early as July the 30th and as late as August the 10th, but it's most acute on those most intense on those first 10 days of August, where you may be deeply disenchanted with something to do with the work situation, and maybe also connections to how that work itself generates revenue from far off places, or how that work is connected to matters to do with quality of home life and well-being physically. I can only say that I busted my ass last year as an Aries sun, right? Career and purpose, making a career out of astrology to the point where my health suffered. And so, for example, I think a lot of people who are hard driving Aries may reassess matters of health and work and look for new agreements, Juno, about how they wish to actually proceed. And the end of the day, Neptune will help you have a realistic view on work and health matters, and you may make changes based on this realism and illumination of what is true. Taurus, sun, moon, and rising. Now, Neptune's rolling back a retrograde tide, July the 2nd to December the 7th, where something that may have enchanted you may now be seen to be not so enchanting after all. When it comes to your Pisces real estate and your sky, well, your Pisces whole sign house real estate is your 11th house of friendships and groups of belonging. And often, therefore, with Neptune having been direct since March the 11th, you may have engaged in groups, clubs, social events, or certain friendships that were quite enchanting or quite mesmerizing. And you now may reassess them And you may go back and see somehow between the dates of July 2nd and December 7th, there are some problems here, right? That you see that the tide's gone out, and you can see that that friend is an addict, or that your friend is a manipulator, or is somebody you no longer wish to associate with. Saturn retrograding is also kind of helping tell the same story. Let's pare down and prune these friends that are not really good friends. However, in the 11th house, we also have career gains and our long-range dreams and goals for our life. Well, Neptune, when he was going direct, could have had you all fantasizing about some long-range goals in your life or possible career gains that you were capable of maneuvering into. And as he goes backward, he gives you the eye of what's real and true, and he dispels the fog of confusion and illusion. As he retrogrades in your 11th house, any relationship to an elder sibling stories are also being revealed. What's really there, what's really true about that relationship. Well, we also have the trine to Mercury at the onset. You won't see it here because we're talking about the inception chart. So the onset of the retrograde has Mercury at 29 Cancer, and 29 Cancer has to do also with siblings, but also short distance travel, the local environment, and the neighborhood. Well, Lilith will be in the late degrees, as she still is here, retrograde, by the way, of your 7th house. For some of you, there's this need to really also reassess the relationship you have to your neighbors and neighborhood and the daily environment in which you activate your life, and all of your relationships to your groups of belonging, to your siblings, to your one-on-one marriage partner, because that's where Lilith is retrograding. Now, Lilith retrograding in your significant long-term love story house, right, can be a story, because she was the first wife of Adam, of going into a deeper look at, the properties of your significant other, him or herself. Because there's a rebellious, streak with that Lilith archetype, whether it's a man or a woman that you're with, it doesn't matter. Is your partner going to have the expression of the Lilith energy in the story? And you're not minding it necessarily so much. It does trine that retrograde Neptune. So let me know. And you'll notice, you probably can't keep your eye off the fact that Uranus is going to be at 27 degrees opposite that Lilith in the marriage house in the first week of August. So again, what is this kind of rebellious, Uranian, freedom-loving, breaking free archetype in the I thou axis, where some of you Tauruses may feel like you need to break free of some relationship? With Neptune opposite Juno in your house of romance, there is some tension. What vows, romantic vows and agreements in a long-term committed love story may you be willing to breach or break? And if you do, you're doing it because you're now coming from a place of looking at what's underneath the surface that was hidden from view and addressing it squarely. If you're a parent and you have Neptune opposite Juno in the house of your children, you may also be breaking some agreements with your child, or they're breaking agreements they had with you. So just keep that in mind as well. Certainly, as we look at that first week of August and we have Neptune in her detriment in the house of romantic love, we're seeing some turbulence and some changing of the direction of a romantic love relationship for some of you Tauruses in the early first week of August. But we feel that beginning of the turbulence in that part of your story all the way beginning on my dates on that July 30th through to August the 10th, when it's all underway. All righty. Ultimately, I don't mind a Neptune retrograde, but you've had Neptune in your 11th house retrograding for half a year every year. And often this just looked like you kept having to reassess your friendships. And a lot of Tauruses I know got involved with narcissistic, mentally ill, addicted to substances, alcoholic type friends or groups of friendships. And in the comments, has that happened to you, Taurus? And if that's true, then this is, you're coming to a pattern break, a pattern interrupt here in those paths that you've taken. Sometimes your best friends may not be so best for you. And so a lot of Tauruses are assessing that. And you've been doing that since 2011. You're about to finish that assessment forever in 2026. Gemini, sun, moon, and rising. My sun has progressed into Gemini in the last 12 years, 13 years. And so I totally relate to this, you guys. We are going to experience some kind of tide goes out, sober-minded, true look at what was under the surface of career and reputation stories. Anyone who has a Gemini rising, sun, or moon, but particularly sun and rising, sun, career, rising, everything about your story, may have been very successful in a Neptunian career directions ever since 2011. This means art, music, creativity, photography, modeling, imagination, filmography, video platforms like YouTube. Okay, so this is going to close out and change into something else in February of 2026 once Neptune fully leaves Pisces for good in February of 2026 and begins a journey through our 11th house. So right now, instead, it's much more about, well, we've been here before. We've felt this energy. There's a pullback and there's a reassessment of what was so wonderful, enchanting, and mesmerizing and hypnotizing us about this dreamy possibility of a Neptunian type of success in our 10th house of reputation and career. So it could be practical, like maybe back in March, because we were reassessing things that began around March the 11th. Maybe a practical note on this is that we're reassessing new jobs we started or new career directions or avenues that we began to open up in March. And we're not so sure anymore that this is the thing for us. We're looking at it realistically for what is really true. And sustainable, because Saturn says sustainable dreams can come true in our career path, but we have to look at it from a sober, realistic Saturnian vantage point as well. Saturn and Neptune are basically just cooperating in this retrograde, asking us to go back over old ground, and Neptune's old ground starts in March, and really say, well, if you have some goals and dreams that you want to create lasting value and a edifice of something powerful up here, then you're needing to go back and reassess some of the dreamy possibilities that may not be so sustainable, Saturn, that you were trying to put into place in March. Now, for me, to use me as an example, as a progressed sun career in Gemini, it would have been in March that I threw myself headlong, full-time, full-on into a new level of determined commitment to my YouTube channel. And that may be something that just because I did what I did do, right? It may be something I'm definitely reassessing in some manner. We'll see how that looks. Ask yourself what you're doing to reassess career and reputation stories that you were quite enchanted by that really began to pick up speed March 11th. Between July 2nd and December 7th, you're in revision and clear seeing and defogging your view here. Well, I also noted that on the onset, we have a trine to Lilith on the day of the retrograde, July 2nd, and a last 29-degree anaretic Mercury at 29 degrees of your second house. Well, these are what we call Artha houses in Indian astrology. They apply to Western astrology. This is about career, work, job, employer-employee stories, health, and also money, possessions, earnings, savings. So there's a whole kind of like the pentacles of the tarot, really, a whole kind of like, let's look at the squaring away with money, savings, earnings, career, and work matters. And there is a need for that to be a predominant theme of question and answer within yourself between July 2nd and December 7th. Ask and you shall receive. If you want the answers, they will come to you. Just ask, knock on the door of reality and say, hey, department upstairs, I need an answer about work, health, career, reputation, savings, money matters. When we see the opposition happening, and with Lilith, you can break some rules. I'm just going to call her like a rebellious, rule-breaking, archetypal, fierce feminine. And she's in your 6th house. And how do you want to redefine things and not worry about being demonized because of it, right? You know your own stance about your work. You know what you want. You can do it. You can be that independent energy, fierce, energetic. And as you do engage that, you might also find that because of Mercury in your 2nd house, the fierce independence rule breaking, I don't give an SHIT around the kind of way you do the work you do, is going to be opening up Mercury 2nd house, greater marketing, mercantile, messaging, monies, basically. Okay. Now we're going to talk about the opposition to Juno that's happening basically July 30th through to August 10th. And that is going to be destabilizing some agreements, contracts, or vows you've made regarding home matters. Now, it's very practical. Sometimes with Juno down here is like a lease agreement. It's a mortgage agreement, or it's agreements or vows you've made with another person that you live with. And you may be reassessing them and breaking them or changing them in the real kind of defogged viewpoints. And because Neptune's in the career space and the change of the agreements are in the fourth house, there's quite possibly a very reputation changing story here as well. So examples would be you decide to break up with the person you live with, or they break up with you, and now the world sees you as a non-entity. Or you're making decisions based on career agendas that make changes in the home necessary. Certainly, you're going to have that Mars. I'm doing a whole video on the Mars Jupiter, but you're lucky and you're great with Mars in your house of you in the Gemini real estate in the first week of August. You're very decisive and making very big changes in home, relationship, and career matters that are bounteous and prosperous in the first week of August. But there is something about changing an agreement in the home that you'll be addressing to do with home and committed matters that need to change, right? And I gave you the lay of the land on that. Cancer, sun, moon, and rising sign, we have a story of a movement here of Neptune retrograde on July 2nd to the 7th, which means that things that began to show up in your life as early as March 11th are being reassessed. You'll keep reassessing them until next March, but the acute reassessment, the tide pulls back, you're no longer enchanted, you're being able to see what's really true for you. This is happening between July 2nd and December 7th, and the tide is pulling back in your ninth house. Now, that can be very much about your spiritual beliefs in life. That is a house of what, we would call wisdom, truth, and knowledge. And that's why it's academia, campuses, colleges, and churches, and spiritual advisors, and religions, and all of that stuff. And so when this energy pulls back and you see what's under the frothy surface, some of you may be looking more deeply at your life philosophy, what spiritual philosophy guides you. But you may also be realistically assessing an educational path or a spiritual mentor or guide, and you may no longer be so enchanted by that spiritual guide, that mentor, maybe even that counselor or therapist or coach, and looking at that person's influence in your life a little more squarely with a little bit less fantasy of their perfection. Saturn can indicate the perfection and you imagine that person has. If you have any court and legal matters that require judges, there's King Solomon, Saturn up there, I don't know. There's a revealing of what was not seen that it was may be very useful for the forward momentum that you need to win a court matter. And that forward momentum would be after December 7th through to March 29th of 2025. We do note that as the onset of the retrograde begins, we have a flow to Mercury at the 29th degree of Cancer. So obviously, if you're Cancer, sun, moon, and rising, and you have your sun, moon, or rising near 29, let's say 26 to 29 degrees of Cancer, what a powerful time this is. It does flow. You're feeling the flow, but there's a flow from that Neptune retrograde. And Mercury is you with your mind, your ideas, your understanding of something profound. Neptune in the ninth house of spiritual truth, wisdom, philosophy. If you're a book publishing industry type of Cancer and the book publications belongs to the ninth house, so also I'd put podcasts up there, what you publish that has a lasting and durable form, and maybe serialized as well. There's a pulling back of the Neptune energy. So you may have to look at that potential publisher again, reassess the agent you thought was going to get you published. That kind of stuff will be very sobering and realistic look at it all for you. But also from the past, Neptune retrograde, Saturn retrograde is publishers, agents, and publishing industry people from your past may be showing up as well to help you move forward in a way that's more realistic, but also very solid. And the moving forward would be December 7th to March the 28th. With the flow to Lilith, rule breaking, ball busting, first wife of Adam. What are the ways you wish to, go your own way and come hell or high water, do it your way in the house of entrepreneurial endeavors, creativity, and the muse? I'm going to stick with that energy here because these are Dharma houses. Mercury in houses 1, 5, and 9. These are Dharma houses, and they have a connection to your soul and what you're here to do at a deeper level, and how you're here to move through the words of, the idea of inspiration, the idea of enthusiasm for life. And there is a reassessment of what you need to do to be enthused and creative and excited by life. But you may have to break a few rules or do it your own way and not worry about whether people demonize you for the way you do things, creatively or romantically. Just because we have a rule-breaking Lilith in the house of sexual and romantic love, there may be a new romantic story from this Neptune retrograde. A retrograde Neptune can also bring people back to you from the past, but they would be connected to foreign countries, foreign lands, or academic settings as well. And finally, we're going to note that July the 30th through to about the 10th of August, you're in a bit of a tussle about an agreement or a vow or something you're going to persevere and stick with when it comes to third house storylines, a writing project, a website, a social media project, a relationship with a younger sibling or a neighbor or extended family like cousins and uncles. There's some kind of commitment that may need to break. Travel plan commitments as well may need to break, or teaching and learning agreements may need to be looked at more squarely and more realistically, and you may cut away from them. So like say you were going to be teaching a course and now you're looking back and going, But remember, the retrograde is March 11th. I'm sorry, the retrograde will take you back to things that were looking very much like what do you call it? Like not too good to be true, but looking like enchanting to you, like super swell stuff to do with ninth house matters since March 11th. And now you're going to go back July 2nd to 7th to reassess your view of those things and whether or not this is something that you wish to keep committed to up here. And there may be some fractures of commitments. Third house commitments can also be commitments regarding things to do with people you interact with in your daily life, the everyday people that you see on the regular. And so childhood friendships are here, breaking away from a vow to always hold that friend dear. Or sometimes we can break away from a younger sibling, and then maybe that person isn't the best for you. You need to fracture the relationship. The goddess of friendliness and love is in her detriment. Oh, I just knocked my mic over. Shite. And so that doesn't bode well for those relationships there in that part of the sky. So keep in mind that you may decide to fracture or end in a very realistic and sober-minded way a relationship with an aunt, uncle, cousin, niece, nephew, or younger sibling or a neighbor. Leo, sun, moon, and rising sign. The sky is indicating that between July 2nd and December 7th, you may become disillusioned or disenchanted a little bit as you see what's clear and real and true. When it comes to money you share with a significant other, like a marriage partner, business partner, or monies that you've invested, or tax savings and things to do with unearned income, like stock investments, or inheritance monies. So this kind of financial part of the sky, disenchantment, is here. It's also a moksha house for spiritual awakening, to bust out of your own individual sense of an egoic self. And so there's some kind of maybe potential here for that to be true. And it has been true since 2011 to qualitatively up-level your spiritual life. And you may go back over old ground also regarding any kind of psychological challenges you had, especially from your childhood, as this Neptune retrograde will trine Lilith, the ball-busting first wife of Adam, who can do her own thing and doesn't care what people think about her. Happy to be the mother of demons. And so what are the demons that you can be mothering from your childhood that you want to also be able to dispel the confusion, illusion, and see what's really true for you? And with Mercury at the time of the station retrograde in your 12th house of full moksha liberation, again, we're seeing a lot of spiritual upliftment that's potentially happening for many Leos as they look more clearly and squarely at what's real and true. However, on a practical note, houses 4 and 8 can activate the inheritance and legacy wealth from a family of origin story storyline. With Saturn in your 8th house, maybe money's from an elder, maybe headed your way, like a grandparent bequeathing you something from the family stories. And pay attention to your dreams, especially because the onset of the retrograde activates at 29-degree Mercury in the 12th house. This can be a hugely important retrograde all the way through to December 7th, in which your dreams at night can be very informative and very illuminating of something deep within yourself that you need to understand, especially around childhood and ancestral narratives, even if it involves secrets from the family of origin. The turbulence of July 30th to August the 10th involves an opposition from Neptune to Juno at the 29th degree of your second house of savings, possessions, and financial wellness. And this is an opposition from a house of shared resources with another. Therefore, there is going to be a potential need to deal up some commitments that you probably verbally made to financial obligations with another person. With Saturn as the ruler of your marriage house, for many of you, these are financial obligations, commitments, and contracts connected to money you share or money that is connected to your main long-term committed monogamous love partnership. Otherwise, you may also be breaking away from some subtle psychological challenges regarding addictions and things you put in your mouth. So for some of you Leos, you'll be able to quit the addictions because you look deeper into the mysteries of your soul, Neptune in the 8th house, and you can fracture those, break away from those addictions and those things you put in your mouth. Because maybe, sometimes we make agreements about foods that we eat or substances that we put in our mouth to ourself. We make false agreements to ourself that now it's time to break it, I think with the Venus, the goddess of pleasure, in her detriment, there's a sense of being willing to forego pleasure. Venus can be either a temple prostitute or a nun, honest to God, when she's in Virgo. So where will you be able to step back away from this archetypal pleasure-seeking habits of eating and imbibing things that aren't good for you, because you're able to see more clearly from the 8th house view the psychological drives that limit you because you're reaching for the pleasure in your oral fixations, and that's not serving your wellness. Saturn rules the house of sickness in your chart, and he's going to be retrograding with Neptune. So better health comes through better food styles and agreements around that as a result of your retrograde cycle. Virgo, sun, moon, and rising sign. So, for every Virgo out there, reminding you that you've had Juno moving through your house of you forever. Gosh, I shouldn't know when she started there, but it's been at least 6 months. And this means you keep looking at your marriage type partners or significant client obligations or customers or business partner obligations through the lens of Juno, which is about persevering and not giving up and quitting, but still Juno can also be about divorce. And so a lot of you are looking at this, should I stay or should I go tussle for many months. And with Saturn in your significant marriage relationship house, that person has been more difficult to be with, or they've been going through difficult times themselves. And so this has been a hard time in your life regarding long-term committed love. When Saturn's in the house of the significant other, they may also be controlling, stern, distant, cold, or isolated from you in some way. So keep all of that in mind as a backdrop, because this retrograde Neptune, now don't forget, Neptune in the house of significant love relationships since 2011 has been hard, because you've often seen the best in somebody with your rose-colored glasses and failed to notice they're an alcoholic or a drug addict or they're mentally ill or they're just not what they seem to be. Their presentation is not true. My Virgo rising daughter had a narcissist full blown and she couldn't see it, right? Where everyone else around her could. So that is a backdrop for you to really understand that this is coming to a close. This confusion and delusion and enchantment around love and romantic long-term committed love is no longer going to be plaguing you after 2026, with a bit of the summer of 25 also, where it sort of lightens up a bit. But what I want to note is that what happened in March, right? March 11th, in committed long-term love stories, significant others, client obligations or agreements, seventh house stories, where you made some decisions based on sort of your rose-colored glasses view of that business partner, client situation, long-term marriage type partner situation. You made decisions and took actions based on a fantastical, imaginal, everything is wonderful, energetic, maybe, right? You're a little deluded, perhaps, March 11th. And now starting here, July 2nd to the 7th, you get your realism view of things as the tide pulls back and you see what's left on that shore that you couldn't see before. And for many of you, it can be a very sobering time because Saturn retrograde is the same idea, the sober, realistic energy here. Or your partner's being realistic with you and you're like, oh, damn it, they're being awfully, harsh here. But you're going to feel that July 2nd to the 7th of December. Now, when the onset of the retrograde begins, we have a trine to Mercury at 29 degrees. I'll have the sign of Cancer, and that we also have the Lilith story at the onset at the 26th, 7th degree of Scorpio. Well, what that is going to do is create a grand trine in the houses that are all relational. You and your groups of friends, you and your siblings, cousins, nieces, and nephews, and all of that, and aunties and uncles, and you and your marriage partner. So the huge kind of like tide pulls back in all of your relationships as you look at them more closely, because the tide's pulling back at the 29th degree as well of that Mercury onset of your 11th house. You may really be reassessing a lot of your long-range goals, dreams, and plans for your life, especially when it comes to how you create wealth or money in your stories. Jupiter's in your career house, and that's going to make you quite successful and lucky in career. But there will be that conjunction to Mars coming up in August. And for some of you, it could be a very bold and declarative change of your job or change of your career objectives this August. When I see the opposition to Juno that's going to happen July 30th to August the 10th, I note that this is going to be a real screeching moment in a long-term committed love for many of you, because it is going to be how you have been hanging in there. You have been devoted. You have been like Juno, long-suffering wife of Jupiter. And all of a sudden, there is this really intense moment here where you're going to eyeball this really clearly. And now don't forget, later on, you're going to have a finger of God with Venus and Juno, and that's going to engage the houses that have to do with situations that are going to be very challenging. It's going to be, I won't get into it all the details right now, okay? But it will be about money and significant love relationships in October, and the finances you may share together and what you need to do about it. Now, also, my feeling here for you is that this is a 29-degree Juno. She's old and she can be particularly turbulent, but she's also particularly wise because she's old enough to be the 29th degree, which is the peak of the experience of being in Virgo. And Virgo is a priestess. Virgo can be very celibate. And so there's something about, where are you with that? Because Venus in her detriment may make you feel better about being you, but better about being very, I just want to be by myself and I don't really need to be your sexual consort. And some of you may be having literally, because Saturn rules the house of sexual and romantic love challenge turning points July 30th to August the 10th in a longer term committed love story. Do not start a new relationship under this energy field because it will not be easy. So if you're single, just don't date anybody that week, okay? If you're single, could you meet somebody under a sky of Neptune retrograde with a Saturn retrograde? Well, sure, why not? December 7th. July 2nd to December 2nd. You would say it's a karmic relationship with someone maybe with a significant, at least 6 or 7, 8 years older age difference or younger Saturn. But you're also going to bump into the fact, I think anyway, of that Juno opposition and later on a finger of God with Venus that can indicate a new relationship starting here now could have turbulence later on. Just saying. Libra, sun, moon, and rising sign. Well, we have a retrograde Neptune starting up here on July 2nd to December 7th, going back over old ground that is familiar to you from March 11th to July 2nd. So what were you doing March 11th to July 2nd, now that you're going to have a much clearer view as the tide rolls out and the enchantment becomes maybe disenchantment or just realistic understanding regarding matters to do with work and health. Now, work matters here are your colleague, coworker, workspace, your own office, whatever that looks like, home or at a real place. This is just the environment and the way you do the work you do, the dutiful service that you give the world, and your health that goes along with it. Also pets and rental agreements as well. As this Neptune pulls back the tide, you're going to see things under the surface that weren't visible to you, particularly when it comes to health, because Saturn here since 2023 to 26 can bring karmic health challenges to you, but also the sort of solidity and perseverance and discipline to improve your health. So some health revealing of health matters that you were overly optimistic about, and the tide goes out and you're going to see more clearly that you still need to look at the fact that you do have like a gastrointestinal problem after all. You're right. If you were masking it with drugs, that would be Neptune direct. Oh my God, my knee hurts. I'm just going to take, Advil on the daily. And now you realize you might want to go get it looked at, and see if you need surgery or something. So there's that kind of reassessing of what's realistic and true around health matters that you may have been overly optimistic or deluded about. But when it comes to work environment stories, let's talk about that. Because Neptune's retrograding in one of the Artha houses and it's connecting to a Mercury in your 10th house of career, 29 degrees anaretic, and Lilith will be in the late degrees of your resources, money, earnings, and savings. This is about looking more squarely at situations that you may wish to complete or end, 29-degree Mercury, when it comes to your career and reputation. And it can look like being more freedom, rebellious, doing it your own way when it comes to your own financial situation, especially regarding career and work matters. So you're going to look at that kind of situation, July 2nd, December 7th. For some of you, like a decision needs to be made or wants to be made about getting out of a job or a work situation that is drudgery or difficult and hard, right? You're grinding in your work because this is where Saturn is. You're working hard ever since last March through to February of 26. But with that late degree 29 Mercury, you may negotiate yourself a new situation in work that's far less difficult, including a new work environment. The difficulty of July the 30th to August the 10th is the opposition to the goddess of commitment in the 12th house. What vows, commitments, agreements have you made to 12th house situations? Now, that can be to quit an addiction. That can be to situations of agreements with prisons, mental health institutions, institutions that serve the underprivileged, agreements or contracts you've made with foreigners or people in far off foreign shores. The 12th house commitments can also be very soul worky, right? This is a very karmatic axis. And you have old vows or commitments that you've been like becoming more aware of in the last 6 months with Juno here, like a vow of chastity or poverty or some kind of strange other lifetime vow, especially with Venus here, maybe vows regarding abstinence from pleasure, and that maybe you're reassessing some of those older vows. And you're going to do it from the axis of karmatic engagement, right? You want to shift some stories in your karmatic and past life narratives regarding pleasure and work and hard work and bed pleasures. Because Venus, the bed pleasure goddess, is here in your 12th house as well, in the bed pleasures house. So reassessment of your romantic inclinations too, because Saturn rules your sexual romantic 5th house, and he is retrograding with Neptune in the house of karma and past lives and axis of karma. You guys may be changing your minds, Mercury, about, I'll give you examples. I always thought I wanted to be with women, but I want to be with men. I always want to be with men, but now I want to be with women. I always thought I was, cis, and I'm not. I don't know. Something like that could be going on. The energy as well could be breaking an old karmatic vow of great magnitude, because you're going to see that 29 degrees means completing a karmic cycle of vows or agreements you've made in other times and places. Who will you be on the other end of this, Libra? You won't even know yourself. One of the things I love about it, the whole story, is that sextile to Uranus. Big rags to riches storylines can emerge as you break karmatic vows that no longer serve you. Just keep that little tidbit in mind. Scorpio, sun, moon, and rising sign. I am still recording. Goodness gracious, good. So first of all, July 2nd to December 7th, as we have a retrograde Neptune, is going to have you reassess things that were on your plate since March the 10th. And those are areas to do with romantic love, sexuality, fertility, procreativity, children, fifth house, entrepreneurial, and artistic and creative endeavors. Certainly because Neptune has been here since 2011, if you're an artist, a filmmaker, a storyteller, a writer, a musician, you've been pretty preoccupied with developing those parts of your story since 2011, and entrepreneurial activities as well. But romance may have been under a spell of enchantment, and you may have picked romantic sexual partners along the way who may have not been the best for you with that Neptune transit. And you may have had some problems with your children, suffering from mental health challenges or addictions as well. As Neptune is about to go back over old ground that he's been plowing with his rose-colored glasses on since March, you may be reassessing your idea of what you wish to do in an existing romance, in an existing relationship to a child, in an existing sexual, procreative agenda, like to have children, not have children. And the retrograde leaves behind on the beach, right, under the foamy wave as it recedes, things that you need to see, but there's no need for it to be negative. This is a flow called a trine to your Scorpio sun, moon, and rising. And you may see that when the tide recedes, you've got a gem there. You've got like a perfect seashell, a conch shell, or something magical, because you're looking at a receding foam in the house of the muse. And it can be that at the end of the day, that one poem, that one song, that one book, that one something is left standing for you to notice as the true gem. With Neptune retrograde here, an existing love story that could have began to take off in March onward may have to be reassessed through the eyes of what's realistic, true, and not just a fantasy. Now, as the onset of the retrograde begins, I noted that the rebellious, do it our own way, F the rules and the structures, I'm not second fiddle, Lilith is in your first house. And all the things I just said pertain to you. Do it your own way, break the rules, don't care if people demonize you, you got this, right? That's the basic energy there. But also, when the retrograde begins, we'll have Mercury at 29 degrees of Cancer. And that is an anaretic Mercury in the ninth house of foreign shores, book publishing, publications, foreign lands, institutions like international governing bodies, like NGOs and stuff. But you may have a reassessment of a deeper part of you, because houses 1, 5, and 9 are Dharma, the deeper meaning of your life, the path you're here to tread so that you're sharing your gifts with the world, the meaning of your life. And so there's a deeper layer of assessment here, as this retrograde Neptune instigates a story to do with what you need to understand or know, Mercury, about the deeper meaning and path of your life. Practically speaking, however, it could engage opportunities in book publishing, foreign land travel, or just plain old luck, good old ninth house luck, right? And for some of you, the retrograde could give you some financial luck from an old lottery ticket, like under the bed, and you scan it and you win, or something like that. Okay, Mercury games a chance, and the fifth house is your house of gaming and speculation, and Neptune retrograde could mean some kind of opportunity for financial good fortune that's very lucky, coming out of your past and stepping into the now. One thing I will say is that the difficulty of July 30th to August the 10th is where you might be reassessing a fantastical agreement, vow, contract you made with a significant friend. What agreements did you make with some group of belonging, friendship circle? I mean, group could be anything. I decided I'd be the head of the homeowners association. I decided I'd lead the book club. Did you step up? What did you make a decision, vow, or agreement to do with those things, or with a friend, just somebody in your larger social groups and networks, or an elder sibling? And that agreement now you're looking at it more disenchantedly, more realistically, more squarely, with both a retrograde Saturn and Neptune opposite Juno in that window of time I just discussed. Really, it's the first week of August. Holy man. So you could be breaking some agreements you've made with social groups, friendships, or in your case, career, right? And we'll address that because with the sun in your career house, which is to put you on the top of the sky in a big spotlight, right? And everyone can notice that you're there. You're also sort of noting that Juno is in the gains of your career, the salary, the earnings, the rewards, the new positions, and you may break an agreement you've made because you want to enjoy your life. Neptune, fun, play, pleasure, fifth house matters. And maybe you say, well, I said I'd take that job or I moved to that new position, but I decided, no, it's not going to serve me. That gain will not be enjoyable and it's not realistic for where I am in my life right now. So that kind of thing being reassessed by some of you the first week of August. Finally, did you have a vow or an agreement within yourself to a long-range goal or plan? You may be changing that for sure. That's that retrograde. That's that Venus already out of detriment, almost with abstaining from pleasure and joy in the social groups and circles. And some of you may just be breaking away from some group of belonging in the first week of August. But you may also be breaking away from a longer term dream or goal around celebrity, creativity, fame, and great financial gains. And somehow the price of all of that isn't worth it for you. So some of you will reassess that as well in the first week of August. All right, Sagittarius, sun, moon, and rising sign. What happens is that we have a reassessment here. It's going to be a little less enchanted and more realistic as Neptune moves backwards July 2nd to December 7th. And you're reassessing things that you were considering quite enchanting since about March 11th. In what part of your reality? In the part of your reality that has to do with your home life, domestic, private life. The nest where you live, your domicile, your relationship to your childhood and your mother. These are all fourth house matters. Now, Saturn's been here since last March and does not leave until February 26th, doesn't full-time leave till then. This can make your home life seem like a hardship. You might be feeling lonely in your home, alone in your home, melancholic, heavy, burdened, or sad in your home. An elder may be living in your home. But whatever Saturn's doing down here, he's toughening you up. He's at the base of the midnight sky so that you can come out the other end in about 15 years from now with some new career ambition success story from what you've been incubating in the dark night of your soul. So ultimately, Sagittarius, this feeling of being enchanted March 11th and hopeful and maybe filled with possibility regarding home matters, you're now reassessing it as the tide rolls back and you see what's really underneath the water as the wave recedes, so to speak. And Neptune is about, that enchantment that we can have when we eyeball our romantic life as well. And I want to bring that up here because with Jupiter moving through your seventh house through to next year, June the 7th or 9th next year, Jupiter's a tricky bugger. He can make your partner very successful if you're in a relationship, like a long-term love relationship, but he also brings blessed endings. And depending on the degree of your ascendant-descendant axis, at some point he will cross your descendant. And well, if you're single, that can bring you a beautiful new relationship. If you're with somebody and that relationship isn't for you, he does bring very powerful endings that are seen by you or your partner or both of you to be meant to be or positive or bringing blessings to each of you. I only bring that up because basically this Neptune will eventually, square Jupiter at the tail end of the seventh house next spring. And all of this indicates the potential for some fractures in a domestic relationship and long-term committed love. Now, you may also note that at the beginning of the retrograde on July 2nd, we see a flow to Lilith in the 12th house, and also there will be a flow to Mercury anaretic 29 degrees in your 8th house. Couple of thoughts. If you're on a spiritual path, this is all good for your spiritual awakening, divesting from your family of origin, your ancestral stories, and past life hangups. Otherwise, this is also connected to other people's money and shared resources, foreign shores and foreign land income, or foreign land love stories as well. And possibly some of you may be looking at the need here to negotiate or converse about or discuss Mercury, money you share with a significant other. This can also involve inheritance monies, family of origin monies, and mutually shared monies in business or love partnerships. And there's a lot of that conversation on the table. I mean, there's a strong possibility for a lot of Sages, sun, moon, or rising, but mostly sun and rising, to have an elder come live with them. And maybe this regressing of Neptune with conversational Mercury in the eighth house of shared resources can be a conversation in a love relationship with a partner about whether or not grandma or grandpa or aging mom or dad on her or your or their side needs to come live with you guys. That's very strongly possible in this kind of sky. When I look at the opposition to Juno, it's a fracture of a vow or a disillusionment with a vow or agreement you've made in the public part of the sky. Now, when Juno's at the 10th house, she's the goddess of marriage in the house of weddings. And quite ultimately, this could mean that your reputation as a married person is something you're not so sure about as you approach this window of July the 30th to August the 10th. And there may be a willingness to look at it more, less enchanted, more realistically. And breaking a vow or having to assess an agreement you've made other than real marriage in the 10th house, like the visible reputation of I am married to this person, is maybe a vow you made about your purpose or your work matters. And you may be thinking, nah, that's not really fitting me. Venus up there is in detriment, not finding her true pleasure in the way she normally would like. She's all about the details. And you're like, yeah, I'm not having fun up here. I'm going to reassess this. And I'm going to do the reassessment from the deepest place in me, the midnight hour of the fourth house, the thing to do with my childhood, some of the things I may have misapplied, like, parental stories that you were indoctrinated by, like nothing fun ever happens in work. One must work hard and slave away. I don't know what your work stories are, but you're reassessing that as well, because you may have had some agreements that you've made regarding what work should look like. And Venus isn't having any fun in Virgo. And you're like, oh, this is like, I'm not enjoying this. This is not what I want. And if you break those agreements about working hard, for example, but without enjoyment, if that's what it was, I'm making this up, then you were doing it because you're reassessing your childhood. And the narratives fourth house is your childhood, that you came up with, that the spells that were cast in your childhood about the way you should approach your dedication to your work. All right. Moving forward. Don't forget, if you haven't hit that like button and you're listening in the live premiere and you're new to my channel, please like, subscribe, and give me a try. Thank you very much. Capricorn, sun, moon, and rising sign. Well, what we have going on, Capricorn, is you have this energy of a reassessment of your enchantment to be more realistic and less maybe hypnotized by what would be your rose-colored glasses that you may have been wearing since last March 11th. And now between July 2nd and 7th, you're going to assess what was going on between March 11th and July 2nd. When it comes to matters of your third house. Now, third house is siblings younger than you, a younger sibling, in particular one under you, aunts, uncles, cousins, nieces, and nephews, childhood friendships, and on and on. Skills-based learning opportunities, teaching opportunities, writing projects, local neighbors and neighborhood. Okay, that's a lot. If you're going to reassess something that was seemingly wonderful since last March, it may have to do with the word neighborhood or neighbors, especially for some of you, if you're floating ICs in the third house, you may be wanting to change your neighbors or neighborhood. But also, third house things have to do with your communications with others, that you email, phone call, text message them. And you may have to go back and look at some of those things around March 11th, even very specifically in the, a couple days after, that you may have committed or talked about or sent messages out that you're not so sure about anymore. Trips and travel and journeys, short distances, and reassessing those. Are realistically assessing them. Maybe some of those planned journeys, trips, and commitments don't look so great anymore. And starting on July 2nd to December 7th, you are in a reassessment. Any relationship with a sibling generically can be in your storyline here. Sibling contacts, July 2nd to December 7th, both Saturn and Neptune retrograde. There may be connections to a sibling from the past or karmatic entanglements with a sibling that are coming into email, phone call, text message modes during July 2nd to December 7th. Now, the other element here would be if you're somebody who has been using this Neptune since 2011 to use it to be very good at writing and imagining and screenplay writing and storytelling and creativity in social media land and social media land success, even on YouTube and Instagram Reels and stuff. That's fine. But now you're looking at it more squarely. Something needs to be revealed as more true as the tide pulls back in that area of your sky. It's the everyday world. Like I get up in the morning, go to the grocery store, I take a walk, get my car, gas filled at this gas station. The every daily environment, fishbowl in which you swim, says Adam Ellenbus, my friend and teacher. And I think that's very much to say, it may seem like an enchanting environment, but now July 2nd, you're like, wait a minute. I encountered this enchanting environment in March, but is it really that enchanting? That's a question, right? You might want to answer. Because the onset of the retrograde involves a Lilith in your 11th house and Mercury at the anaretic degree of a committed love relationship house or client business partnership house, there is a need to reassess those conditions more clearly, especially when it comes to communications with that partner in business or love, travel regarding that person in business or love. And also Lilith, the rule-breaking, freedom-loving element in the house of elder sibling or allies and benefactors, or just simply gains from your career. A lot of this is very relational. These are relational houses, 11, 3, and 7. And you could be reassessing everything from your childhood friendships and your sibling relationships to your significant love relationship at this time. The critical journey of the opposition to Juno in the 9th house is important, July 30th to about the 10th of August. What agreements have you made to do with foreigners, foreign travel, foreign lands, legal and judicial storylines, book publishing contracts and agreements around teaching and academic or foreign travel opportunities? All of these are going to have to be looked at through a more clear, less enchanted lens. The 3rd house represents third long-term committed love stories, marriages. And that can be in a critical turning point for many Capricorns as you really have to assess this story itself and ask yourself, are you being realistic? Or are you still under this enchantment spell? Because ultimately it's not just Neptune, but also Saturn in a whole sign opposition, making committed love stories connected to foreigners, foreign countries, foreign lands, third marriages, or legal contracts, or vows, or agreements, and or things to do with visas, difficult, okay? And you're having to really square away opposite, actually, really look at that tug of war energy of what is true and what is real in the first week of August. For example, you may cancel plans to travel. You may cancel that book publishing contract. You may change a relationship to a sibling regarding court and legal matters. So many ways it can play out. Let me know how that goes for you guys. Remember, Neptune is doing a lot of different things, including a finger of God to Venus coming up. Well, Venus will be in Libra, coming up in the future of the story. That would be October. And we'll be covering that in the all signs portions of my weekly forecast. So don't forget, if you want to know more about what Neptune does in his retrograde, you want to subscribe. All right, I'm one of you, Aquarius, sun, moon, and rising sign. Well, what I've got going on here for us is simply this. We are experiencing the movement of the retrograde Neptune, dispelling our overly zealous enchantment with our finances. And that enchantment, March 11th through to July 2nd, as Neptune was giving us a very dreamy story of financial well-being. He's now retrograde, and now so is Saturn. And both of them are about sober-minded, realistic reassessments and clear seeing of what is needed regarding possessions and savings and money and earnings, and also food and dietary style. Certainly with a Neptune retrograde here is great for kiboshing addictions or substances that you ingest that aren't good for you. And Saturn says the same thing. Inner sage, let's get clear about it. So there's that. And how could you be enchanted about your food style? Maybe March, onward, you were like, I can do this. I could smoke a cigarette a day, but you found yourself, downing a whole pack anyway, that kind of thing. I can relate. Wine lovers middle way is my goal. I say I'm on the middle path, but I think the middle path would be some wine 3 times a week, not less wine every day. You know what I mean? So I'm working on this, being very transparent. I don't like the aversion models, you know. They don't work for me. I've tried them. So I'm trying to figure out a middle path. So there's a good chance that any of you Aquarians listening, especially rising, you're going to find that this is a golden ticket opportunity during this retrograde Neptune to really come to some defining solutions regarding habits and food styles that aren't good for us. Now, that said, Neptune retrograding with Saturn retrograding is a lot to do with structures and boundaries and forms and wisdom around finances. And that's a big story for you during the retrograde through to December 7th. And you might notice as well that as the retrograde begins, we have a flow to Lilith, breaking the rules in the 10th house of career and reputation, doing it our own way, not caring if we're demonized. At the same time, there is also a grand trine forming in the flow and the onset retrograde of a Mercury in the 6th house, Artha houses. There's some changes you want to make from a more realistic, less enchanted and delusional perspective financially regarding work, career, and health matters. It's that simple. You're willing to break some rules in order to do this, and that's okay with you. You're going to do it your way, and you're not about to be defined by the way it should be according to the patriarchal rules of the game. With anaretic Mercury in your 6th house, however, completion energy, you may complete and or fulfill an endpoint to some kind of way that you have been working, like Mercury in the 6th house, you know, the way you communicate, the way you negotiate, the way you ideate in the work house. There's some desire for a change there of that direction. Because 6th house matters involve health, of course. Health and food style are indicated changes in that area. Mercury is about having the information you need, the understanding you need to make those changes successful during July 2nd to December 7th. On July the 30th through to August the 10th, we're going to be under the intensity of Neptune opposite Juno. Now, to break a vow or an agreement or a contract of Juno in the 8th house is really often about money, right? Opposite Neptune in the first, finances. So you may break some vow you've made about the shared monies with your spouse, business partnerships, investments, banks, loans, and mortgages, or in tax structures. I just incorporated. I'm wondering if I should disincorporate thanks to Trudeau and his new tax structure for incorporations and just move to another country. So there may be some desire to reassess some agreements we've made in the 8th house monies. With Venus here in detriment, the underlying energy is there's a dissatisfaction, a dukkha when it comes to the finances that you have with another person. Sometimes just having Juno in the 8th house is about marital assets or monies, and you're coming to some turning point regarding the shared resources with a marriage type partner. And the sun, of course, is burning up your 7th house, which means you've got a lot of focus on another person in your life at that time. That's kind of like your gravitational well is pulling you in. And so if it's about marriage partners, there's a real deep reassessment of how you are going to mutually resource financial wellness together. That is a big energy playing out. As I said, July 30th through to August the 10th. I would say having Mercury in domicile in this part of the sky does indicate the potential for this to work out okay. Alrighty? But also he's retrograde. So these conversations about shared resources, money, and assets with another person of business or love have happened before, and it's being readdressed perhaps in that first week of August. Finally, yes, Pisces, sun, moon, and rising sign. We are looking at a retrograde Neptune, rolling back the delusion that you put on yourself. This is you putting your, own spell on you. I put a spell on myself because you can delude yourself since 2011 as you've had this enchantment, but also This sometimes self-delusion. With Neptune here, you might have thought you were going crazy since 2011, had some kind of mental health challenges, addictions showed up. Maybe you felt like you were in a fog. Maybe you had inertia. Maybe you didn't know what you wanted to do with reality. Maybe you felt like you were walking between two worlds. Okay, so that's coming to an end in 26 anyway, Pisces. But your ability to delude yourself and cast mesmerizing spells around your own self has been bar none, amazingly effective for you every time Neptune was direct since 2011 in the house of you. It's really impacting the later degree Pisces these days, 25 to 29. You guys have been feeling this Neptune fog more intensely than the earlier Pisces rising, for example. But nonetheless, all Pisces still feel that Neptune is making fog machine, dry ice fog, and your way of seeing, understanding, and knowing yourself and what you want in your career, your marriage, and your home life, because it's been fogging up the whole picture. Now, this is a Neptune retrograde, and you're coming out of a spell that you put on yourself March the 11th, and you're beginning to look at things much more clearly. And as you begin to square away with your clear view, one of them has to do with your home life for sure. So keep in mind that as August approaches, you may be wanting to make changes in and about and from your home that come from a very realistic perspective. And also you're really more realistic as well about your long-term committed significant marriage, love relationships, and your career objectives. So keep that in mind. As you are in this, disenchantment and realism mode with Saturn and Neptune retrograde in the house of you. The onset of the retrograde invites in Mercury anaretic in your fifth house. What is it you need to do regarding your children, your sexuality, your romance, your fun, your play, your joy, your pleasure, and your entrepreneurial business endeavors and your creativity, also in connection with Lilith to break the rules in the ninth house? These are Dharma houses 1, 5, and 9. You're trying to align with your truer purpose. You're coming to some completions in the way you communicate romantically or sexually or with your children. You're wanting to break the rules of God. You're doing it your own way. You're not following the scriptures anymore. You're busting out as a first wife of Adam is in the house of church, is doing her thing. You might be breaking free here of some kind of illusion regarding your spiritual beliefs in life. And you may be looking more squarely at your philosophy for life as well during this retrograde as you break rules and do it your own way. The opposition to Juno is going to be in your marriage house. And it is literally what it sounds like. Just like the Virgos, the Pisces have the same challenging axis of I, thou. Your marriage type partnership vows and agreements, or business vows and agreements to a business partnership, are being challenged July the 30th to August the 10th. And with a Venus in detriment in the seventh house, do not start a new relationship under this. Do not go dating and hoping to find the perfect person under this spell. This is not your best dating week, the first week of August. But if you're with somebody already and you see that this is happening here, right? You're no longer spellbound, and you're also sober and realistic and assessing inward your inner sages alive and well. And you're gazing at the vows and commitments of the marriage goddess in the marriage house at a complete turbulent and completion 29 degree. Whether this means a breakup or not, I'm not sure. With Mars squaring everything from the fourth house, it can be domestic conflict with a long-term love story, indicating quite a bit of turbulence for you in the first week of August. Is it a breakup? I don't know. Is it a near miss? Maybe. Is it an internal process because Saturn is internal in his retrograde, and your sagacity and sage-like wisdom, realism, and understanding may be like you come to terms in the first week of August that this relationship won't work. But you may not make any decisions to take action on it at this point. For example, if you have any legal contracts or agreements that involve courts and judges, you may be looking at it more realistically as this opposition to Juno and Neptune transpires. And Mercury is the ruler of your fourth house of property, land, and real estate. He is in a square to Mars, and you may break some legal contracts and agreements regarding home, property, land, and real estate. And you may come into some turbulence in October with shared financial resources with a bank situation or your marriage partner and the money you share together. That's that finger of God we'll be addressing later on in the month of October. Thank you for listening, Pisces. Now, don't forget, the bigger picture story is that with Neptune in the first house, spiritual enlightenment is yours to lose, right? I had all my enlightenment episodes with the big ones, really, the beginning of the rumble of the shakeup of my understanding of my true self when Neptune was moving through Aquarius. So now he's moving here through your sign and finishing up in 2026. So you later degree sun, moon, and rising Pisces, especially with regards to maybe the 27 to 29 degrees, Pisces, sun, moon, and rising, this can be very illuminating and spiritually uplifting window of time as Neptune retrogrades and shows you the true nature of reality, like Neo waking from the Matrix and asking Spoon Boy how to bend the spoon, and Spoon Boy tells him there is no spoon. This is your spiritual window of time for your later born Pisces to get some serious spiritual attainment under your fishy belts. Thanks for listening, everybody. Long video. Didn't really mean to go so long. Like, subscribe, hit the bell for notifications, and I'll see you on the next video. I think this is coming out on Friday, this is the 26th. I'm recording today for my Patreon community. Gets early access ad-free. This is probably coming out on Friday. And then on Sunday, we're talking all about Mercury as Mercury gets into the sign of Leo and what that might mean for your sign. Don't forget, by hitting the like button, subscribing, and the notification bell helps me grow. Check out my Cosmic Moonshine Weekly newsletter. I had a contest and gave away 2 free readings recently to people on that newsletter. If you want to subscribe, you'd be in the contest. You would have won something maybe. And also check out Patreon community, early access ad-free content. Plus, to try me out for the first time, you get 2 free courses. Chiron, the Key to Purpose, Synastry, Are You My Person relationship course, valued at $44, yours as my gift to you for giving me a try. Then you can leave and keep the gift. Isn't this keychain just amazing? I really think it's adorable. Oh my God, I'm going to put my house key on it right away. All right, bye everyone. Have a wonderful, wonderful Neptune retrograde. Bye-bye.